Oh.
Much better.
Oh.
I think we'll hear him here.
What was that?
I said, I think it'll pick up anyway. Good.
The sound without the microphone bounces back.
I'm going to ask you what do you consider the highlights of this legislative session, but really what are the lowlights?
The lowlights? Well, you know, now that we have what they're calling excess money, I think there's
Excess money.
excess money. Well, I don't call it excess money. I think we have to pay. I think that's where the excess money should go. But besides that, there's a lot of lobbyists vying for that money. So it's kind of,
There's a
at every
surprise.
turn, there's money. People want money, and they're all the priority. Whether it's education or nonprofits or you name it, they're all the higher ed. They're all vying for that money. So it's been. I think that's been a big thing that they know it's there and they want it.
The money that's handed down from the government, from the federal government money, is that what they're looking for?
What's the excess?
No, there are two sources of this so-called excess money. One is that in 2017, the Republicans, for the first time in the history of the nation, passed a minority budget through both chambers. And it had very significant spending limits built into it. It was vetoed by Governor Malloy, but what it did was it showed that there had to be, that the Democrats couldn't keep going the way they had been going because we were going down the toilet. So there was a bipartisan compromise which included many of those spending limits. And since that time, the Democrats have been literally, legally unable to spend all the money that they wanted to spend, which built up the rainy day fund considerably. It refreshed the special transportation fund. A lot of the money that would normally have just been pissed away was put where it was actually supposed to go because of the limits that were written into law under that budget. The other source of excess money, so-called, is federal COVID money. There's just billions and billions of dollars just everywhere that was just printed out of thin air and given to the states to spend, and it's supposed to be spent on things related to the COVID emergency, but there's very little oversight about that, and a lot of that money is essentially just being considered excess money. And it all, money is fungible, so if you pay for something with federal money, you don't have to pay for it with state money. So you have that state money.
Until it's gone, and then everybody wants you to fund what they started funding with the COVID, right, which is going on as well.
Yes.
And to Anne's point, I attended a meeting similar to this in Norwich, and it was pretty packed. There was probably 30 people there. And we went through and asked, anybody have any questions? And we were there for almost an hour, and every single person, every single one, without fail, was asking for more money to be put to a certain program or area of the budget. And finally, I stood up and I said, not a single person has asked us about policy. You've all just asked us for money. Don't you think that's a problem? Don't you think that, that if you're all asking for money, that means that there are so many interests, all with their hand out, that where there's just not going to be enough money to give to everybody. And finally, somebody said, okay, I have a policy issue. That's all everybody wanted. Just give me the money.
Three questions on this. How much is the excess monies?
I'm not on the appropriations committee,
I'm not either.
Ralph?
or revenue and bonding. There are two money committees. One is finance, revenue, and bonding, which is getting money, taxing, bonding, things like that. The other committee is the appropriations committee, which is the spending committee. Thankfully, I'm not on either one of those.
Bob, when he was running last year, what was he saying, like 6 million? Or is it
6 million?
Or is it more than that?
Oh, no, it's way more than that.
Oh, that's what what's an estimate?
You know, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's in the hundreds of millions.
Okay.
But, you know, it depends on whose numbers you're looking at and
Mhm.
what budget you're talking about.
That gives us an idea. Okay, so let me ask you, you are representatives.
We're not increasing money for programs, that's what I would say. I don't know what Doug would say.
Well, we need to have sort of a long-term vision of where we're going with our finances. Right now, we owe more money than anyone could imagine. We have not only actual debt where we have to pay back something we borrowed, but we also have unfunded liabilities where we've promised people long-term that we're going to fund something, and we just don't have the money to fund it. So a lot of the money, especially the federal money, was one-time money. We're going to get it once, we're never going to get it again, and that's it. And we gave a lot of that money, for example, to the universities. And we made it very clear, this is one-time money. You're never going to get it again. Use it for anything that's emergency related. And instead, what they did was they folded it into their regular budgets, their regular expenses. They hired more people, which is a long-term expense. And now they expect that every year. And there was a demonstration with all these kids and all these professors saying how we're cutting their budget. Well, no, we're not cutting your budget. We're actually increasing your budget from its regular trajectory. But you got this one-time lump of money for the emergency, and you shouldn't consider it part of your regular budget. And they did, and they continue to, and they say, well, we should fund it all the time. So that's not the kind of thing that we can sustain. We need to have a long-term vision. If there's one-time money, everybody needs to understand it, that it's not coming back the next year. It's not going to be folded into the budget. And we don't seem to do that. We look at things in a 2-year budget cycle. We need to work like a business and look at a 10-year cycle, or at least a 5-year cycle. We don't seem to do that.
Well, and a lot of that's because there's an election every 2 years, so it is, I 100% agree with that as well. And I've had some other legislators that have retired who said the same thing, that, one of the big problems that they've seen is that we don't plan ahead. I mean, nobody buys a home and plans for the next 2 years. They take out a 20-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage, planning how they're going to pay that, what that looks like, so.
So on the national level, because I saw this on the news, they're starting to recall some of these monies from COVID. I guess they have an oversight committee?
Recall the money? I mean, ask
If it's
for
not being,
back?
yep.
Unexpended. If you haven't spent it, it's cut off, and that's it. You haven't-
Because by 2024, right, it's supposed to be expended, I believe.
I'm not aware of any
I didn't know on a state
government
level.
call to ask the state to refund any of the monies that it's given.
Okay.
It's possible it happened, but I'm not aware of that. You?
No, and I can't imagine that they didn't hurry up and spend the money, so I don't know. I don't.
Oh, we've seen some of the local businesses putting money into their business from the ARPA funds. So it's been pretty,
Yeah, there's no
the people
doubt
around
that-
here that, yeah.
There's no doubt that some of those ARPA funds were used properly
It's good
and
to see.
used to enhance necessary services and also businesses. However, much of it is, my understanding, is unaccounted for. And much of it went to things that really weren't COVID emergency things. And you have to go back to where that money came from. It was created out of thin air. That's why we have,
Basic problem.
you know, $6 dozen of eggs instead of
Yeah.
$1.75.
Well, one thing affects the other, and that's why they're looking for the money, because the government is misspending the money in the first place.
Absolutely.
It's a
What did
cycle.
it do to the value of the dollar?
Right, it's
Even
wrong.
you look around at, you know, the kind of, if you will, crises that we have today that we didn't have a day before COVID. People, you didn't have like these huge shortages of finding people to work. I mean, now you can't find anybody to work. What happened to all those people? Now there's supposed to be this big shortage on housing. Well, what happened to all the houses that, you know, all of these things that almost overnight became these huge problems.
That was something I wish I had brought with me, a list of possible laws proposed that we were given
Bills.
at planning and zoning. For
Oh,
land use laws.
that's more of Doug's
Yeah,
thing,
things that they want to change. I wish I had brought the list with me. I don't think they've
Well,
passed yet.
for land use, there are a
Trying to
number
show
of things that are percolating through. One is there was a law passed 2 years ago that allows any person, including people from out of town, or the town government, or your neighbors, to go to court and get a receivership over your property if it's considered blighted. There was a lot of discussion as to what types of towns were appropriate when that bill was first passed. And we determined that it was not appropriate for anything smaller than about 30,000 people. Because with small towns, you got a lot of farms, you got a lot of small businesses that are inherently different than they are in a big city. And the situations are very different. And with this supposed housing crisis, you have a lot of developers speculating on large pieces of property. So we determined that we'll try it in the big cities. If it works, then we'll perhaps have a study to determine whether it needs to be rolled out to everybody. Well, as very often happens, the bill went through. The limit was 30,000, I think, or maybe 40,000. And then the very next year, they wanted to eliminate the numerical threshold, the population threshold, and just say it's for everybody, even though none of the cities had ever tried using it. So we don't even know if it works, or if it's more trouble than benefit. But they decided everybody should have this. Even towns, you know, Union has 800 people in the entire town with lots of farms, and it's right near the Massachusetts border. It would be a prime place for, you know, some developer to come in and say, you know what, I think this section of town is blighted. I'm going to go into court and get a receivership, and none of the people here can afford to fight me. So I fought that very hard. It made it through the Planning and Development Committee with a 15,000 population limit. So the smallest towns will be protected, but we'll see if it makes it through the House. I don't know.
Okay.
14,957.
Got it by 41.
What was that?
But we have 14,957, so we make sure no one can move in.
No, 43.
Well, you got to fight to keep the rural nature of the town, otherwise, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that you just made me think. You both said something kind of negative about the affordable, the housing crisis. You don't believe there's a housing crisis, or do you think there's
No.
a different reason?
No, I don't.
Well, I think things are artificially imposed because of government, insertion into things, and we don't let things naturally happen, and I think that there's so much of government overreach, in my opinion, that it's become a way of life, and many people just can't visualize things outside of that. But look where we are. I mean, what has it done for us? That's what I would say.
Right.
Well, the state makes it so difficult to be a landlord and to provide housing in this state
Go.
that it is creating a crisis by making it nearly impossible for people to manage apartment buildings. They keep putting more and more regulations on landlords, many of which don't have anything to do with increasing housing units. There is a housing crisis in some places. In many places, there is none. And what many of the proponents of these bills in the state are trying to do is spread that crisis out into everywhere. So, for example, my town. I live in Chapel. We have just about 2,000 people in town, and we have just about 800 houses. There are many houses there that are inexpensive, and there are places that you can rent. The state, under some of these bills, would mandate a certain number of low-income housing units in a town like that. And my question is, who's going to build them? Who's going to manage them? And who's going to live there? There are plenty of places to build apartments right now. There are plenty of places where you're allowed to build apartments in our town. We get an average of 2 building permits to build houses a year. Under some of these bills, we would need to have 80 to 90 houses built. Well, I'm not a math major, but I know that to build 90 houses at a rate of 2 a year, it's going to take a while. And the entire town budget, without education, is under $2 million. There's no money for a housing authority. There are 4 full-time employees in the entire town. Who's going to do all this work? Our mill rate is over 40. Well, I'm sorry, 36. 36. So let's say we raise it to 100. We raise the mill rate to 100. There still isn't going to be enough money to build all these houses. Who's going to manage it?
Well, the roads,
Who's going to manage the construction? Who's going to buy the land? None of this stuff makes any sense. But yet, what they're trying to do is force towns to do this and say, well, you're going to lose your education funding, or you're going to lose your discretionary funding with regard to brownfield remediation, or steep grants, or other things. Or they're making it very vague and not making, so towns don't know what funding they're going to lose. So these things are designed for cities. And we had long discussions, and we had the mayors of these big cities come in and testify. And essentially they admitted the goal of this is to get poor people out of the cities and spread them out into the suburbs. Well, how does that affect the town with 800 people?
It grows. So I take it Chaplin doesn't have 10% needed?
No, there isn't a single town in this state with less than 7,500 people population that meets that
Meets it.
threshold.
Okay.
It's impossible.
And I was going to ask about the cities. Are they increasing in population
The state?
in our state?
No.
Our cities? They're
No.
still about level? I
Decreasing a little bit.
wonder, oh, okay. I
And-
wonder
and
about
And the population is shifting. People that earn $100,000 or more are moving out, and people who earn 50,000 or less are moving in. So we are becoming a poorer state by far.
Interesting.
And it doesn't take, we are very heavily dependent on a very small number of very rich people.
Right.
And they all live down in Fairfield County. And they all have houses around the world or elsewhere, and it doesn't take much for them to change their citizenship or the residency from Connecticut to somewhere else. And by doing that, we lose huge amounts of money.
Yeah.
I think more of the immigration problem on the southern border as a reason for the need for more housing.
Only if we're a growing population.
Right, that's why I asked if the cities were growing. Because New York City's a mess and people coming this way. And
Even the proponents of these bills admit there is no shortage of housing. It's a shortage of housing that low-income people can afford.
So
And if you make under $50,000, you can't afford all that much housing. So that's where their supposed crisis is.
the rents are so high. It's like, yeah, you wonder.
Anne, you're in medical, are you in medical committee or
I'm on public health.
public health? I was curious because it's still very difficult to find doctors, new doctors, to get in somewhere. It's been really tough for people. Seniors have had a hard time. Just curious what's going
Well,
on.
that's a problem across the nation. And,
Right.
you know, some of it is just that their cost of liability, they are all, you know, required to take Medicaid, Medicare, and the reimbursement for that is not covering their expenses. So it's more and more difficult to run a practice, and they run into the same problems that we do, well, everyone else does with staffing. Many of them are having troubles, you know, getting staffed, and a lot of the older doctors are retiring, and the younger people just aren't going into that, you know, those kinds of fields. But the up-and-coming family practice unit is becoming nurse practitioners and PAs.
Like we have one in town.
Yeah, versus, you know, a medical doctor. You're going to see more and more, I think that's the trend, which makes more sense from a cost perspective, and even from their training. I think it makes, you know, in a family practice setting, there's, you know, you're always referred to specialties when there's a problem outside of that scope. So OBG, people, you know, you see OBG disappearing everywhere because the liability is over, you know, they can't afford it. So you're seeing less and less of that, and many of them have joined into a bigger practice versus being on their own. You just don't see it anymore.
Is this again government running everything through medical?
I think it has a big impact on that,
Yeah.
and the liability, the lawsuit trend that we have, and sure. You know, and we have, you know, the legislature is constantly mandating insurances, and when you do that, the cost is passed on to the consumer. It always is. whenever you mandate anything or with any kind of business, whether it's, even think about vehicles, right? If we mandate another kind of safety feature, that puts the cost of the car up, and that's passed on to the consumer. So all those things, all those mandates and regulations we do, push the cost out onto the consumer.
Yeah, you look at the price of a new car these days, it's unbelievable. You know, a friend of mine was a plumber, and he just needs a new work truck. And they're talking, you know, almost $100,000 for a work truck. It's unbelievable.
And some of them are on a waiting list to get one,
Yeah.
which is even more unbelievable.
You know, that also brings up the issue of, you know, the national issue, international issue of manufacturing. We just don't make chips for cars in the United States. So we had, you know, during, as we were trying to come out of COVID, we had that supply chain issue where there were cars lining up in the factories here, but they couldn't send them out because they didn't have the chips, because all the chips are made in China. It's a big problem.
We could have a whole town meeting on international things, China.
Or we could have a whole town meeting on the state of the cities. You travel
Town
around
hall.
the country and via, you know, people that go out into the cities, they're in bad shape,
Well,
real
you know,
bad shape.
even when you look at the tax that we want to put on trucks and that sort of thing that we do, all of that is passed directly on to us. And many people don't see it that way. They see, well, you know, they're using our road. Yeah, they are using your roads, but those products come to us, and they're going to be more and more expensive when we make their costs higher and higher.
So Kevin, what's going on in Plainfield?
You know, I was just thinking.
Not much. I have a question that I know probably not going to be able to answer, but is
We'll
there
make
ever
it
is there ever going to be a time where the state of Connecticut is going to really look at how to reformulate ECS funding? Because this has been going on for many, many years. And every time I see it that they talk about ECS funding, you make some minor adjustments behind the scenes, and it impacts a lot of other people. And we never know if we're going to get all of the money. We're always waiting for that last minute, oh yeah, well there's some other adjustment we have to make, and you're not going to get the whole thing. Okay. I don't know what can be done, but it has to be discussion, finally, to fix this.
Well, I'm on education, and of course, there's this whole big push this year to increase that funding and change it and reformulate it, but it's really, the plan is not really, in my opinion, going to be huge earth-shattering changes. It's going to be, you know, a little bit of tweaking. We have a lot of other states that do a really good job of that, and we try to encourage that we use models from other states. There doesn't seem to be any appetite for it. And it seems like they just, it's really funny, we talk about the double funding and so many of those different things that are costly to us, and when you want to address them, there's little appetite for it. I think some of that is pressure from the unions and pressure from that scope of what impacts those things, but that's my opinion. I don't know what Doug thinks.
Well, one of the big problems we have in the legislature, not just with regard to ECS funding, although ECS funding is a prime example of it, is that the legislature is very good at making rules that it won't abide by. It doesn't follow its own rules. So with regard to ECS funding, it set a formula, and then it decided that the formula was lousy, and it kept the formula in place but didn't follow it for many years. So for small towns, what happened was the funding was supposed to kind of taper off with the population. As student population declined in some towns, the ECS funding was supposed to decline as well. But because of political pressures, the legislature held everybody harmless, is what they call it, which meant that your funding's supposed to go down with the population, but they kept the funding even. So that affected other towns that were growing that were not getting the funding that they were supposed to get. So there was this formula in place that everybody was ignoring, and they ignored it for approximately 10 years. And then suddenly they said, hey, we got to get back to this formula. So what does that mean? That means that those small towns that were being overfunded suddenly get this enormous cut because you get back to the trajectory on the graph, and towns that were growing, like the cities, suddenly get this huge boost. So nobody really knows what is happening because there is no predictability. When there's a rule, when there's a formula, when there is a policy that is passed, the towns generally think that the legislature is going to abide by it, but they don't. So any given year, the towns have no idea what the funding is going to be. Plus, they have, even when they're on the graph, they only fund, they have a formula that says each town gets a certain amount, and then they only give 70 or 80% of that. So it's like, well, what's the point of having a policy or a formula if you're going to ignore it, and at the same time you're ignoring it, you're only partially funding it? It's the same with special education. They have this policy and then they don't follow it. So it makes it very difficult for towns to plan because, as you said, they have no idea how much money they're going to get until after the town budget's already put in. I introduced a bill a couple of times that said that the municipal portion of the state budget has to be finalized by March to give the towns time to, the ability to factor that into their town budgets. But nobody wants to hear that because they want the ability to wiggle things around until the last minute.
And the other one that was kind of a big factor for putting our budget together is the loss of car taxes going back to the state. That's a huge impact, and I don't think people realize what's going on.
Is that going to happen?
That's discussion right now.
Oh, but it's not been finalized.
Yeah. I think they're giving it a year to review it. But that could be a huge impact.
Well,
every time.
it would be a portion of the car tax going back to the state. I don't understand why we should treat cars differently than all other personal property. Other than like business personal property. The town assesses it, it's in the town for more than, 90 days a year or something. Town gets to tax it at its mill rate, that's it. That's the way I think cars should be. There shouldn't be a separate mill rate for cars. It should just be, you own a car in the town, we assess it, you pay the tax on it. Simple. This wiggling stuff around with regard to the car tax, there were proposals to eliminate the car tax altogether. And what all that does, the towns still need the same amount of money. All it does is it shifts who pays the tax. People without cars, great, I don't have to pay any tax. People with cars suddenly won't pay tax. Who will pay the tax? Property owners. Because the town still needs the same amount of money. They're going to tax somebody somewhere. So rather than taxing the cars, they tax landowners and property owners. So that means that anybody who rents will not be paying this tax until the rents go up, causing more of a housing crisis. It becomes circular in many instances, and all we can do is get up there and bitch about it.
Those are the big ones for me.
Okay, well, tell us about Plainfield. What's going on there?
A little of this, a little of that. Right now, we're in discussion with a large company to be coming in on 14A. And I was talking to one of the principals yesterday, and we're looking to see, we're finalists for 3 areas, one in Mass, one around, and one here. And we're hoping that we can be able to work something out with them so they know that they already know that we're really interested in having them in.
It's a warehouse?
Yeah. A little different for a warehouse job, though, because these warehouse jobs, I mean, if you're going to like an Amazon or Lowe's, you're talking about between 17, 19 an hour, and that's about it. Here, you're talking about positions that are between 25 and 31 an hour to start. So you're talking about I think at the end of the day, about $85,000 for annual salary. They give annual bonuses. They don't work Sundays. They do 2 shifts. They don't like to do a third. Third is basically shut down and clean up internal. So a very, very good company to their employees.
Any skill though?
There's a little bit. So
A little bit of what?
Skill though? Skills?
Yeah, skill sets. For machinery, for well, they're going to have their own internal policing. So they have a support system for that. Very, very good company. I don't think anybody would mind when it's mentioned who it is, but we're looking forward to finalizing that hopefully by June 10th, I think it is that they said. They'll have a final answer. But we have a lot of tough competition in Providence and up in Massachusetts.
What's going on with the big field across from K&H?
A couple of things that are happening right now. There's the gravel operations over there that's continuing. There's a company that wants to come in to auction large equipment. So
Is that a done deal, or is that still in the air?
they still got to go through the process, but yeah. But they're very, very much looking forward to coming in. So you got that. We are about to put out the bid for the annex to be demolished. Then after that, there'll be a grant. Well, we were applying for grants already for that because we'd like to be able to put up a 140 by 60 pavilion, and then across the street to redo the parking lot. Put a push button and walk crosswalk going over.
What's the annex?
It's the old Plainfield High School. It was built in 1924.
Not far from the road you take up to the high school.
There's a football field. Take a look at the football field right to your left, that building.
There's a
Okay.
building right on that, yeah.
That has some environmental issues which will be part of the bid, and we're hoping that will come through fruition and then actually take it down during the summertime. That way it's not impacting school. There's a couple other things that are happening for businesses trying to come in. We're working with them. There's one company that's looking to put housing in. When all's said and done, they'd be putting in about 320 units of apartments, whether it's studio, 1 and 2 bedrooms, minimal impact to the school system, because most people now, when they're buying a 2-bedroom, they're looking at one of the bedrooms being their home office.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of work out of home now, so minimal impact, I think, to the educational system. We're working to finish our budget, obviously, like everybody else, get that through. We just passed a $4 million bond for our sewer department, for upgrades to the sewer department, meaning replace with little larger clarifiers, be able to handle all the extra business coming into town, so we have to think about the future. Also upgrading the generator, which was in the mid-70s, so that it's a large generator. We're using that for bond money, but we're also going after, and we believe we have the approval for a clean water fund, so $1 million out of the 4 would be for that. We also had just gone through and got approval for P&Z for another section of the upgrades to sewer over by the dog track. The dog track, when it was in operations, had its own pumping station. And what happened was when they went out of business, they donated that station to the town. Okay, but unfortunately, it's one of those.
Somebody's got to maintain it.
Yeah, and it was in bad shape to begin with. It's one of those where there's a real true, if you think about it, it's a wet well where basically you're walking down a cylinder, and then part of the cylinder was actually starting to fall apart, so it's a safety issue. So we got that approved to do that with some of the ARPA monies that we had. We put $3.4 million into ARPA monies into our sewer department. It really needs to have those upgrades. So the infrastructure is kind of important. Local stuff that's going on right now. Every town has the upgrades to the fiber optic. Great. Every company is coming in and doing work. So you've got construction on that. We have road construction for paving. We've got, just outside here, you saw that there was some work on the roads.
Yeah.
We have this section of town being redone for the pipes that were there in almost 100 years. Same thing up on Warrigal section. There's a Blueberry Lane area that's having that done. They were doing so well with it that the Connecticut Water said, hey, do you mind if we do another one? So in the fall, they're going to do another one over off of Cemetery Road. There's 3 or 4 roads over there they're going to do. They may not complete it through the fall, but they're going to make sure that it's pavable and plowing is no problem, and they'll finish it off in the spring.
What's happening with the Amazon facility?
Amazon, to be honest, they have, like everywhere else in the country, they have an issue where they thought they were going to spread out and really do a lot of these modules where it'd be last mile. Last mile is great, but if you take a look around, you know that Johnson, Rhode Island is like 4.5 million square feet, 4.5 million square feet.
But they have a facility there?
Yeah, they're building it now. Dudley, Mass has the same thing. Half of it's automated. And now they're also, in one in Johnson, they're talking about bringing drone activity to deliveries. So a lot of those things that they had planned on doing are changed. So we believe that they're in the process of selling the building. So, which is great because, I mean, that's really what you want to do. I don't mind taking the taxes in right now because I get a CO for it. But I want jobs. I want the taxable machinery on the inside. So that's really what it's about, and I think they're in the process of doing that. So we have a couple of companies that are interested and lined up already. I think they know that. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
So they just put up the shell, they didn't put in any equipment inside?
Yep, you'll see a lot of them like that. I grew up in Massachusetts originally. My father was Navy, went everywhere, but my hometown is Leicester, Mass. Same thing. They put up almost the same thing up in Leicester, and they're not coming in yet. So
I was surprised at how big that parking lot is. How much parking do you need for a warehouse like that?
Well, to explain how that would work, that one would be, because this last mile would have had three separate sections of 150 vans coming in, so like 10:30, noon, 1:30. So that's why the need for the larger parking area to begin with. At nighttime, they would have done the stocking, bring in the 18-wheelers, stock everything, and then the early morning shift comes in and sorts it all out. So that's why there's a need for that. The one up on the hill, the large 1.2 million square foot proposal, that's going to need, originally they were talking about 1,000 parking lots, but they have to do a small reconfiguration, but yeah, they're going to reconfigure to about 600 or so. But still, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah. So those are some of the things coming in. Obviously, we're still working on some issues with Quinnebog Valley Trail. There's a section that was approved for $2.2 million from where Central Cycle is that road in the back there. That actually crosses over by the fish hatchery and over to Route 205. That was approved. I'm going through the steps of how to bring it in. The problem with that one is that there's two groups within DEEP that have, one is for trails and one is for the hatchery and things like that. They're kind of fighting it out as to, we don't want anybody.
There seems to be a lot of that going on in DEEP.
Yep.
You've got the guys who are trying to help encourage hunting and fishing and using the environment, and then you got another department that comes in and tries to shut everything down because they want to protect the environment from human use.
Yep.
It's almost like, you know, they got to figure out what they want to do.
So that's that section. Then Killingly had applied for something in 2019, never heard back from it, all of a sudden we hear, oh, that's great, now you've been approved. For the trail that leads from where Killingly's Quinnebog Trail
Yeah.
stops,
Yeah.
to continue on over to where I just mentioned, over to 205. So most of that's in Plainfield, so we have to sit down and talk about the logistics of how that goes through, and we'll be talking with the state on that one soon.
Is that part of like an airline trail or something like that?
Not really, it's mostly just the walk trail for the Quinnebog. And then you've got the state of Connecticut has the State Valley Trail, which in our case ends over in Moosup by downtown Moosup area. There's a bridge right there, and it's going to continue on over into Rhode Island. All these things are great. We also have the open space over Cape Downing Road. That was when the state of Connecticut deeded off 139 acres for passive recreation. We were able to purchase a couple of little plots to get to it, and now they have a committee that started to talk about how to do it and how to get to bring it to fruition. Hopefully in about a year, you'll see a lot of that actually happening over there. Upgrades to Lions Park, again the annex and trying to put a pavilion over there. So there's a lot of things to do in the area. Sometimes it takes a little longer than others, so it'll get there. So that's what's happening there.
Do you guys have any questions for Kevin?
That's loaded. No, I'm listening. I'm
Questions
listening.
that are PG rated?
One way or another, we find out about everything. Somehow, it just comes to us. We don't have to do anything.
So those are the things that are going on now. We have a couple of smaller companies looking to come in. There should be a grand opening, ribbon cutting for United Farm and Ag, which right now they have a building on the by Rood Road. They purchased the old Motorsport Nation building,
Oh, yeah.
and they've renovated, and they're going to be opening up next week.
So they're going to move?
They're moving, yeah. They want to do a ribbon cutting sometime.
We're
Maybe,
not supposed to be 95?
yeah, you can see it right from the highway.
What's it going to be?
United Farm and Ag.
Oh.
Yeah.
They got all their signs on the
It's
building now.
looking good.
Is that the
They
one that used
paved
to be a
it.
bowling alley?
No.
No.
That Motorsport Nation used to be in that big building off the highway.
You could see it all
They-
395.
Yeah, they moved down to where there used to be the bowling alley and renovated.
It's behind Wendy's, off of Lathrop Road.
So there's that. We've got a lot of events coming up, just events that are happening, they're great events. There's a couple things going on today where you've got the VFW has a craft fair, you've got another craft fair over K&H. You've got next week is very, very busy. Plainfield Beautification is going to redo some plantings, original plantings that were drafted out 40 years ago over in a park here by the tank. So they're going to be doing that. While that's going on, we have Project Pen here. And then we have another ribbon cutting for a Flex Gym purchased by a new owner. And so they like to have a car show and a ribbon cutting there. We've got for the poker. There's next weekend here, right after the Project Pen leaves, and we're going to be starting up for a poker tournament here. For recreation, they've got a luau event, and it's happening like from 10 to 4 in the afternoon here with the boat races in the pool.
That's next Saturday?
Yes.
What about where Rawa's was? Anything on that? I think it
Yes.
was the last
Yes.
one.
There's a resident who purchased the property and knocked down the rah-rahs, the old rah-rahs,
Yeah.
and they're going to be taking down the house right beside it. They already put applications in with wetland and also with P&Z to bring multitude of things. It's a gas station, fast food, a drive, I think it's either a walk-in or drive-through, and then a car wash in the back. So there's lots of things that are happening with that one. And there's little things.
Fast food like McDonald's, or are you?
We don't know.
thinking,
Usually they apply for it, then they usually shop it out.
Yeah, I got a question. Any word about across from Amazon? I see it's for sale, 17 acres or so?
Yeah, that's been in discussion with a company to come in to put up there's a company that wants to buy it. It's one of these, I won't say T8 groups that like a truck stop, but it is a smaller truck stop. It gives the truckers an opportunity then to at least rest, gas up, take shower, things like that. So he hasn't come to the table yet. He's waiting for what happens with the building, for the Amazon building, and then they'll go forward with that.
17 acres big enough for a truck?
Just enough. It's just enough basically for a 4 or 5 truck sleepover area, but still an area so they can come in and take a shower and eat. That's a,
I'm thinking of the truck stops out west, and it's
Oh,
like,
God,
it
no.
gotta be 100, 150 acres.
yeah, like Buc-ee's or something. Yeah.
It's a Flying J.
Yep. Yes, we have a lot of things that are happening. It's just a matter of it's going through the steps, the paperwork, and once that one shoe drops, I think everything else will come through.
What's the prospects of your mill rate budget is?
Yep, great question. Yeah, so what we're doing is, this is our proposed budget. Yes. Our proposed budget, our 5-year capital. Obviously, our biggest problem has been revale. And it's as everybody knows, this is not a great time really to go for revale, because all of your house property values are up.
Yeah, when does that happen, this year?
It's
Or
already,
next year?
it's part of this budget.
Oh, it's part of this budget?
Yeah.
Oh, see, ours is
So-
gonna be,
So-
yeah, ours is too, I think.
Yep, so what
Which
you're
is
gonna have
next
is,
year, and
yeah.
we're,
So to give an example, if you took a look at the back, a second page on the inside, you'll see that,
second page of which document?
one,
Okay.
revenue, there you go. Take a look at the top left. Current budget is 2803. The mill rate being proposed is 20.88.
Oh, one of this
Yep.
page.
So with a collection rate of 98% and grand list being 1.470 billion, you're looking at a mill rate of currently being proposed as $1,441,000.
What's your mill rate here now?
Right today,
Yeah.
2803.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
So you, okay, so you're,
Proposal,
did the,
we knocked it down
did your
7.
grant list come in already?
Yeah, it's all right
So
there,
you're
Okay.
proposing that's gonna go down to 20?
20.88.
Wow.
It was going to be 21.23. The Board of Finance said, look, we don't think it's going to pass for the public. Let's see what we can do to knock some numbers down. So they asked for $400,000 to be cut from the Board of Ed and $250,000 from the town. And so that gives you that number that it shows on a right-hand side, 20.88.
Board-
That's what we're proposing the mill rate to be. It is difficult when, look, I know that there's a lot of people on fixed incomes. I do know that. The problem is, last 3 years, 0 mill increase, 0 mill increase, and a decrease of 0.30. Sooner or later, you've got to start paying for things, like everybody else. Utilities went up, everything.
Yeah.
So the costs are still going up, but we're trying to be fair about it, but I can't just keep on saying forever and ever we're going to have a 0 mill increase.
What was the percentage increase in the assessment?
For property, for homeowners, it was 55. For some of the commercial, it was,
55% increase?
yeah, that's where they balanced most of it. Wow.
Ours was 60.
What?
Ours was 60%.
Yeah, on
increase.
average. Wow.
That's why everybody's in shock.
What do you mean yours is 60, but he's saying 55?
Well,
Do-
average is 55.
Some were lower, some were higher. Ours was 60.
Some were really.
Some were
Oh,
80.
depending on the property.
Yeah, property
That's
assessment.
a huge increase.
It is.
Most of the hit was in the ranches, I guess. That's what I was told, yeah. The ranches got big hit.
Geez, I hope we don't have a 50% increase.
Well, I mean, mine went up
We need a job
$583.
just to pay the taxes, huh?
Mine went up $583 for the year.
See, I should have had a cape.
Oh. Do you have a
Now I'm just-
company do that?
Yeah, ECOT.
Oh,
And guess what we're not going to do in the future?
usually we got.
Yeah.
Yeah, did they actually do it, or did they sub it out,
I subbed it out.
so they went with Vision just like everybody else?
I'm not sure if it was someone Vision or somebody else, I think.
Was it?
It was another group. So that's what we're up against. Does it look like we're going down? Absolutely, we're going down 7.15 mil. But individually, I might take a, you got 60%, mine was probably in the 50s. No, it was actually lower than that. But you have fluctuation based on the value of the house.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's difficult though to then say, okay, well, if that doesn't pass, what do you cut then? That's difficult alone. What do you cut it down to? 0? You're still going to have people who are going to pay more because of the values of
Oh,
the
yeah.
house. So there's no way around it. I mean, we can cut it down to 18, but that's taking off another $2.8 million down to 4.2 down. How do you do that?
You also have to be a little bit careful when your mill rate is too low, that the state looks at it and says, you could raise your mill rate, you don't need
Money.
X money, you don't need this kind of money. They did that a couple of years ago. They essentially whacked all the towns that were being responsible.
Right, and they rewarded those that were higher.
Yeah.
They actually did, they dispersed money to them and gave them some breaks that.
I mean, it's a great juggling act for any town. The other part about, like you said, you want to make sure that you have money and you're being fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
Well, your reserve rate for, I don't know, Killingly's reserve is right now. Is it like 10%, 12%?
I don't know, to be honest.
We're currently at about 14%, but we're going to need to use a bunch of money to prevent a massive mill rate increase this year. So it's going to go down to about 10.5% to 11%.
We're way over that, but we also have to take down the annex. That's $500,000 for that. So I have to be responsible and make sure that there's no emergencies coming up, and I don't want to like throw money into other things and cut us short.
Well, there are people who say we should not have a mill rate increase and we should just use our reserves. And, we don't know what's going to happen in the reval. We assume it's going to be in the 30% range, but what if it's not? You never know.
Yeah.
And the rainy day fund is there for a reason. If anything else goes wrong, absolutely.
Right. Now, I obviously don't want to have it too big because then you're taxing people more than they need to, but you've got to have some money in the bank in case something happens. A lot of these projects, like, you get a bridge that collapses, very often the town has to front the money, even if it's going to get it from the feds or from the state. You got to put the money up. Well, you got to have it.
We do have another project. I gave you a semi-list, but we have other projects that are going on. We have sidewalk project in Oregon, sidewalk project here by McDonald's, across from McDonald's, going over to Big Y. We have Dow Road Bridge, has to be reconstructed, and that'll start sometime in the fall.
Which one?
Dow Road Bridge. It's just a matter of getting approval from the state DOT for the final step of it, and then scheduling it. And basically closing off the road for about 5 to 6 months. Makes it go quicker. Otherwise, if I did it one way at a time, it would be there for about a year. So I want to get it done and over with and make it less painful for the residents.
The
So
cost
what's
was
on
higher
your
too,
mind?
with that, right? To do
Yeah.
flow
Which is
through,
great, but
it
it
was
takes
going to cost
forever.
more, so.
And it also increases the cost because of that.
Right.
Anything else on your
Oh,
mind?
you did very well. It's,
I-
About an hour?
Anyone on transportation?
No.
No, Heather is, right? I just want to know, any talk about the tolls anymore?
I haven't heard anything.
Not at
Good,
the moment.
good.
I think they're going to have a hard time with that discussion when we have a surplus. Even
Right.
though, as we discussed, the surplus is not really surplus.
Well, I do think they did reroute some of the ARPA funds to transportation
Yeah.
projects, so that probably took some of the edge off of it for a while.
Right, and given that we have these various statutory caps from the 2017 budget, much of the excess money goes into the special transportation fund as it's supposed to. So we don't have the transportation funding crisis that we had up until 2017, because the money now is by statute required to go into that fund. And they can only use it for real transportation issues, although they still fudge that as well.
and one question for you, how are the numbers on the bus? How is the bus
Oh,
doing?
that's a great question because we're very happy with the way the bus from Plainfield, we got help from our local support, and we got a bus route back with NECOG. The NECOG bus also ties in down to CCOG, so it's a great way for people to be able to access transportation that just don't have it. To the point where we were now, it was a trial run, and the trial run is done, so we're now part of the regular routes.
So is the usage what they anticipated?
Better.
Better.
Oh yeah, better. Because
Oh, good.
if you look at the numbers collectively from NECOG, we were actually taking up a third of the numbers, which is, think about all the towns I've been through.
Yeah.
We're taking a third of the numbers.
So what's the route?
So we never had well, we shouldn't say never, but for 20 some odd years, we were not part of the NECOG bus route. So it goes all the way up to the Mass Line and all the towns surrounding there.
112?
Yep.
Yeah.
So now our route includes 5 stops in town. One of the stops goes down to Big Y, which then connects down to Jewett City and Walmart.
Lisbon Landing.
And that way they connect seat to seat and goes all the way down. So we're very happy with that, and people have been using it to the point where I'm now working with NECOG to see if I can get the, if a rainy day you want to stand out there, wait for it, you have the overhang
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and a seat. So I'll see if we can get a couple of those.
Is it free at the moment?
They went back. It's $1
Dollar.
a ride.
That's okay.
But you could ride it pretty far, I suppose,
On $1.
to city.
Dollar go from
You do the whole circle.
Thompson.
Lisbon Landing to the Massachusetts border for $1.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yes,
Maybe
true.
I'll jump on that.
Yeah, I don't know
That
about
one
that.
actually goes all the way down to Lisbon Landing, when it catches you all the way down to the coastline.
Oh, yeah, you gotta get on the
It's a long
other,
ride.
yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'll bet it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of stops, but
Well, it's a long drive.
yeah.
You know,
Hey.
if you just drive in a car from Massachusetts to the Sound is well over an hour.
I think you have to switch though. If you were going from Lisbon Landing, you'd have to switch at Warregan and go up to another line up that way
Right.
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah, so switch in Warregan, so is there a
Our,
station in Warregan?
at the post office.
Like I said, I wanted to put those actual real seated covered stations there, but there is a place where you actually pick it up.
Okay, because, well, one of the bills in the legislature right now is what they call the Transit-Oriented Development Bill, which they take a pin and they stick it in each transit hub, is what they call it, which is any bus station. There's debate as to whether or not it's a bus stop, but certainly any bus station, train station, multimodal transportation hub, whatever, put a pin in it and draw a circle around it on the map, half-mile radius. And within that, you must have certain density requirements in your zoning. So the state would mandate that you have between a minimum of 14 units per acre within that zone, up to, geez, I can't remember what the maximum was. I think it's like 35 or 40 units per acre. So, I don't know put a pin in Warregan and go a half mile out. That's an awful lot of places. I don't know what your zoning is up there, but my guess is it's not 14 units per acre. So this bill would mandate that type of zoning change. I've been fighting it because I think every town should be able to decide what their zoning is.
360 strong, right?
Sorry?
360 strong?
169.
Yeah,
Oh,
169 strong
169,
is
sorry.
the organization
Yes.
that's fighting against it. And Desegregate CT is the organization fighting.
You were at that meeting, right?
Same as last time.
Yeah.
I've been to a number
Quite a
of
few of
meetings.
those, yes.
Desegregate CT, they're big on the affordable housing.
That one of their justifications for the mandate of the increased density in zoning is to allow for low-income housing, but I'm not not sure the two are really connected.
I wanted to tell you, Doug, on the bus, on our bus route, it's a deviated route. So if you call 24 hours ahead, they will go off the route up to, I think, 3/4 of a mile. If you live off Route 12, they'll come
And that's a
pick you up.
regular bus will do that?
That's NECOG.
Wow,
You call,
Yep. That's the program we signed up for, a deviated route.
that's pretty good. What kind of buses are they?
They're the small ones,
Those little like toasters?
yeah, what you
Yes,
see up in
toasters,
Killingly, right, yeah. Toaster, that's a good,
That's good. Glad you have some access to transportation.
Hmm.
All right, anything else?
Okay. Back to Saturday chores.
Thank you all. Good discussion?
yeah.
Down there.